gentlemen, welcome back to the Podcast Digest, episode 163. My name's Dan Lizette. Thank you very much for coming back and taking another listen. Got a great episode for you this week. Another interview show, finally. Thank you for your patience and delay, the delay that we've had in getting out a new episode. But it is going to be well worth the wait, I promise you. Got a great conversation for you this episode. Before I do that, I need my other half to help me have this conversation. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. We've got a couple of great guests lined up this week to talk about a new obsession of mine, the Earios podcast network, a whole plethora of shows, all female, hosted, produced, published, the whole nine. And we've got two of the founders with us this week, Amanda and Maria. Amanda, Lund, and Maria, I wanted to ask how to pronounce your last name, so tell us that first.
I love it when people do it right the first time. So let's just hear what. All I'm going to say before you say it is just say it how it reads.
Okay. Blasucci.
Yeah.
Yes.
See?
Hey!
People get very concerned and they get very afraid of what they might say when all you have to do is read it.
It's like hard C, soft C. That's where I was.
I know, but it's a 50-50 chance. And a lot of people put the C, like they say Blasucci, like they don't trust their eyes.
Well, Amanda and Maria, thank you guys very much for taking the time to join us here on the Podcast Digest. There is so much to talk about with Earios and the big ones and all kinds of fun stuff that all the links are going to be in the show notes, folks, to check out this stuff, which you definitely should do. But before we jump into the Earios world, folks may or may not be familiar with you. You guys are definitely have a public profile, but in case folks haven't heard about you, I'd like to know a little bit more about each of you personally, say, long before a podcast thing ever started. What's a little bit of the background? What do you want to be when you grow up? That kind of fun stuff. Amanda, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll tell you about Maria.
There you go.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so Maria was born in Los Angeles, and she went to school at a all-girls high school out here in Los Angeles. She's entertainment royalty. Her dad was in the biz. And this is horrible. This is horrifying to you. No. Then she went to Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, where she studied theater. And that's when her life was forever altered when she met her soon-to-be best friend and business partner, Amanda Lund.
That is the most condensed personal history, and I have to return the favor. Maria, what's Amanda's backstory?
So Amanda was born in Long Beach, which is part of Los Angeles County, so don't call it otherwise. And she went to Los Alamitos High School, and then both of her parents are lawyers. She comes from a family of lawyers, but what was crazy was she decided to go an alternate route, and she also decided to study theater at Loyola Marymount University with an English an English minor, but I think she soon dropped that.
Yes, thank you.
So that's when she met the magical being that would be her life partner in business and in creativity, and that would be Maria Blasucci.
I am so tempted to ask each of you to answer for the other one for the rest of the episode.
You got it. Yeah, you're not going to... Honestly, it's going to be the same answer no matter what.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's one and the same.
This is why I would personally take things completely off the rails and need to throw it to Jason.
Dan's a great driver. Don't...
Yeah, he's doing great.
You're up,
Hello?
Jason. You're up, Jason.
Oh, I am up. Yeah, no.
I said throw it to Jason.
It's one of the, listen, I wanted to ask, and if you can answer for each other, fantastic, but like first podcast or introduction to podcasting?
Oh, well, this is basically a joint answer because Maria and I were doing a podcast before I even knew what a podcast was. All I knew is I was talking into a microphone and that Maria would take it and put it somewhere.
It was called the Hostage Podcast.
You're so trusting.
And now, I know. I was like, I don't know what's happening. All I know is she comes over once a week and we talk about movies. But that was called Trading Movies. And before that, I'm trying to remember what my first podcast was I really listened to. I mean, honestly, This American Life.
Yeah,
or Radio
same
Lab,
here.
I think.
Same here. I think mine was the Ricky Gervais podcast, probably. And then, yeah, I think before that, though, because This American Life felt very podcasty, even when it was on the radio. And then that transferred over to it, being podcast form. But the first podcast I'd say was the Ricky Gervais podcast.
So podcasting now is a huge thing and takes up a big piece of what we're going to talk about. But before we jump in a little bit there, you guys are both from California. You've been in the business of entertainment, let's say, and I'm curious. That's obviously something folks that are always curious about and always like to hear stories about. What would be, before we get into the podcast world, something that you might want to share about your experience in film and TV?
Oh my God! Well, how long do you have?
I've got all night. Others may not.
We'll only need a couple seconds.
Yeah. Oh, you want us to talk about our careers? Yeah, we got that.
It's not
Don't
that
blink.
bad, is it? Come on.
Don't blink.
Start the timer.
Well, you'll be interested to know that Amanda and I both portrayed not only the chipmunks, but also the chipettes on set of Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel, which when the film in post-production, those voices would be done by Anna Faris and Amy Poehler, but on set, we were the voice of the tennis ball on a stick that was on stage.
I have
That
seen
was our big
movie.
break.
That was the big break, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That led to everything else after that. That was the drunk history piece. That was all.
Yeah.
Everything came based because of the chipmunks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, clearly, that's how things happen.
That's right.
No, girl.
Oh, she went there.
No, girl.
Oh, Dave. Oh, Alvin.
Wow,
Sick.
that's excellent. That's so good.
And no post-production either. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that was, and we do it live. We did it live every day, off to the side, behind like a little curtain.
That's so amazing. That's so.
There
amazing.
wasn't a curtain. There was just, we just, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun
Yeah, it
doing that.
was.
So, moving to the world of podcasts, I know that you guys know this guy. He's been a previous guest of mine, and now nobody except maybe you two get to talk to him anymore because he's a big deal. Previous guest of the Podcast Digest, Matt Gorley. What's it like podcasting with that guy?
Know him. I'm sleeping with him.
So am I.
Wow. I used to.
Yeah, I know him in the biblical sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Amanda's husband.
Yes.
Matt's a great guy. And, if you're trying to get the dirt,
Give me something that Conan will
There's
respond
no
to if I
dirt.
share with him.
Oh, that Conan, I mean, he could latch on to anything.
he's
No,
great.
Matt's great because Maria and I were podcasting before I even met Matt. But we had kind of taken a break. And so then when I met Matt and I started listening to Super Ego, it was like podcasting was brought back into my life and then Maria's life by proxy in a fully different way. Because before that, I didn't think it would be possible to do a podcast that was like an improv podcast or a fiction podcast. But that really opened my eyes to the possibilities. And now it's like podcasts, it's our life.
So was Pistol Shrimp sort of a courting phase, the early days?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
No,
we were
Amanda,
already,
that was like
married
5
by
years
then.
in.
Back then? Okay.
No, or like at least dating, living together. So no, Pistol Shrimps, we were already an item by the time he was doing Pistol Shrimps. Yeah.
God, I'm going to have, you know what? Now I'm wondering if this 6 degrees thing, I'm going to have to go back and listen to my interview with Matt. This was, years ago now, and see if he made a reference when we talked about Pistol Shrimps. I don't know. I may have to share
Really?
some audio with you.
If you left a little Easter egg
Yeah,
of
I'm
like,
wondering if he made any mention of you during that conversation. I don't know.
He better have.
That's what I'm wondering. we could.
yeah, did he mention the old ball and chain?
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to have to.
Did he
look
mention
it
a
up.
weight that was pressing on him constantly.
The reason why his work was suffering.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look up. Okay, this was episode 98 of the Podcast Digest. This was a while ago. So this thing, July of 2016.
Oh, yeah.
July 13th,
I mean, that was
2016.
back when we were fighting a lot. So I don't. We've since worked through some hard times and have settled down.
I know he was a joy to talk to. I love what he's doing right now with Conan, and I think that that's great. And I'll be honest, I did not know that. So my apologies.
You didn't know we were married?
I did not catch that. I don't know.
Oh.
It's not clear enough on either his websites or yours.
That's good. You can't let the people know that you're married. You have
That
to let them know
actually-
you're single.
I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty excited that you did. For some reason, that makes me like, because what a fun surprise for you.
Yeah, I mean, I scrolled through the back catalog of the big ones. I saw his appearances, right? And I said, and I knew you're on Pistol Shrimps. I saw that you'd appeared there, and I just thought, well, he was a previous guest, and I thought I'd mention that. And yeah, so
Because in your mind, were you thinking, I should introduce those two? They'd be really good
they'd be
together.
really good together. Yeah, that's small world of podcasting. Yeah, make it even smaller. That's for sure. Jason, what do you got?
Well, I wanted to ask about like the other hosts on the network. Are you guys all spread out? Do you all meet up once a month? You know, is there because it's a full network in every sense, right? So what's the cross pollination, I guess?
Well, there's we're all in the same city, and so we're all, and a lot of us record. We have our little Earios studio here in Hollywood, which I'm at right now, and so a lot of the shows record here. And then we have a traveling kit that we go to for some of the shows, but for the most part, we're all kind of within, you know, we're all together a lot of the time. You know, coming in and out.
About the 10 shows that we have, Maria and I, for the most part, handle all the production. Our third co-founder, Priyanka, she does a lot of the creative and the business side. And Maria and I are the ones who are physically recording everything. So we basically have the show split down the middle. And like I play point on Filling the Void in the Margaret Cho, and Maria plays point on Web Crawlers and Foxy Browns. And so I see certain people more than and then Maria will see the other hosts. But it's not like the hosts don't necessarily interact ever. But hopefully next year,
they do, because they
we do crossovers.
Yeah, we just did a crossover today with the Alarmist and Web Crawlers. Oh,
I was just about to mention. I was about to say, sorry for the interruption.
You
there.
clutched your pearls.
No, I'm going to have
You,
to check that out because when I was first introduced to you guys by the wonderful folk that connected us together, Megan, she had not mentioned originally. This was a couple months back about us getting a chance to talk with both of you, but she just sort of told me about the network and said, take a look, let me know if any of these look good. So I looked through the roster, and randomly, really just by like title and show art, I subscribe to both The Alarmist and Web Crawlers, and I've been listening to them every time since and love them both.
Gosh, that's so nice.
Those are they are regular listens for me now, and I am an avid obviously running this show, podcast listener, over 100 shows in my app, and those two have cropped up into the regular rotation, and I love them both. I think both those shows are doing excellent work, and so feedback to the founders. I love them both, and I'm excited to hear a crossover.
Well, what about notes?
God.
Do you have any notes?
Oh, yes. We'd love your thoughts.
I know you have notes.
Notes. Let's see here. Ouija boards should be on more podcasts.
Okay.
Let's see here. I mean, notes. I think Web Crawlers is almost perfect. I mean, I really do. Those folks over there are doing such great work. I really love the topic-based investigation, that type of stuff. The Alarmist is kind of coming up behind it for me. I'm still kind of getting familiar with it. You know, the idea of throwing everything up on the board to find the responsible party and then kind of eliminating after is kind of... I think they both have such great concepts to build from, and I think that the hosts and guests on there are just wonderfully going into building up the best they can from their premises, and I not much in the way of critical notes of either. I really have turned into a pretty big fan of both those shows.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. And thank you so much. I think both of those shows, like, they were some of the first shows we started developing when we had the idea for the network. And there are good friends like Melissa Stetton of Web Crawlers and Allie. Melissa's on the Pistol Shrimps, and Rebecca of the Alarmist is like a really close friend to me. So I think both those shows are like really hitting their stride right now. And I'm like so excited. In the new year, we're going to try and just like really focus in on like perfecting everything, because a podcast is like an evolution. It takes a while, I think, for people, the hosts and the guests and everyone, to really like hit their stride. And so I think they're just going to get better and better. So I hope everyone gives them a chance.
Yeah, and I'll make sure links to both those on the show notes. You just made me think of something else. I think the Web Crawlers came out almost fully baked in terms of format, guest interaction, stuff like that. I can see already an evolution in The Alarmist from the early episodes to now. I've seen kind of a lot more polish, a lot more kind of tightening up. And so I've definitely seen the progression. But I think Web Crawlers was pretty much like formulaically succinct and just completely consumable right off the bat.
They'll be so excited to hear this. You should have those gals on. They'd love to talk to you.
I think that will be a plan for sure. Like I said, especially if they're doing a crossover. That's so cool. Is it going to be in both feeds or just one?
It's going to be in just one. Well, just one, because Web Crawlers doesn't have many guests on unless they're like,
but we should maybe just drop it in the Web Crawlers feed as a bonus and to promote the Alarmist anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
See, I don't have to give notes. You guys got that covered?
Yeah, no, we get it. We give ourselves notes.
But we have completely jumped the shark here. I want to hit the big fat pause button and say, for anybody who hasn't heard of Earios, can somebody give us the quick and dirty backdrop? We've just jumped right into it, but tell folks what it is we're talking about here.
Well, Earios is a podcast network by women for everyone, meaning that all the hosts are women, but it is not specifically for women. It's just that it's a creative outlet for the women that we know and look up to. And yeah, we started it about a year ago is when we put a year ago in July is when we put out a Kickstarter where we said, hey, we have this idea for this network, and we got a bunch of donations, and we kind of hit the ground running from there.
Yeah, we launched the network. Okay, so this last July, we launched the network. So we've been launched for, almost like 6 months now. And yeah, we have, it's crazy, right? I think we have 10 or 11 shows total, and that includes the podcast Marie and I host, the big ones.
Yeah, big shout out to the big ones.
Yeah.
I want to jump in. You talked about podcasts being an evolution, and I think I agree. I think Dan agrees. I think most people listening to this show probably agree. But you guys are you almost divided and conquered on a production end. Is it easy to keep track of all of these shows in their various different evolutions from like a behind the scenes production standpoint?
No, it's very hard. That's I cannot believe what we've done over this past year, getting, I can't even, the number, I think it's 12 shows into production and keeping them going for 5 months. And it's really just us two. And we have, I think, 2 or 3 editors that we outsource to on a couple of the shows. But it really is a lot. And we're very lucky that there are 3 of us, 3 co-founders. So we kind of all, pick up the slack for the other person because we're all also still like writing and auditioning because we're actors as well. And so there's just like, it's been a lot, but I really think that we're just truly at like max capacity with the workload. So hopefully in the new year, we'll be able to kind of focus in on and get a little help.
Yeah, what we're doing right now is we're asking you guys if you can help.
Well,
this is a recruiting effort here. Almost.
Yeah, or if anyone's listening and they're like, I can help us, help us.
We will put that word out for you.
I do think the other follow-up is how do you stay organized then? I mean, as a
Honeybook, baby, Honeybook.
No,
Just
like we
kidding.
do. They're a sponsor.
But you all should use Honeybook. No, we have, it's very good that there's 3 of us. So there's me, Amanda, and Priyanka. And so it's I can't imagine doing this alone. It wouldn't be possible. And so it really is, everything is divided to where we don't have to think about certain things that we know someone else is taking care of. And it's not even that thing where it's like, oh, if you're not doing it, then you don't know if it's going to get done. Like we're so in tune with one another that it's like, if Amanda says she's doing this, and it's out of my brain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great. We really all trust each other. And like the 3 of us we've been working together for a really long time because we did a web series together called Ghost Girls, probably like, God, almost 8 or 9 years ago now. So, sorry. It's more like 7 or 8 years ago. But anyway, so we all have a really trusting working relationship. We do have a coordinator, I should say, and she's amazing and so helpful and is like all the scheduling and the kind of logistical stuff. We just kind of had her jump on board maybe a month ago. Or a couple months ago, and she's just been like a godsend. So that way we can really focus in on the shows. But there is always like logistical stuff, business stuff that comes up. Although Maria and I especially would like to just kind of focus more on the creative, but it's all encompassing.
I tell you what, these are the seeds that I'm hearing, not to be predictive or that I know anything about the future, but these are the seeds of things that you guys are talking about that is going to be one of these 2, 3, 4 years from now where I'm going to say, hey, Jason, wasn't it great that we got to talk to Amanda and Maria back before they got huge?
Before they died? Before they passed on?
And I will say this, you think I'm joking. However, when I got to interview Phoebe Judge from Criminal, she was on episode 4. Now she's doing live shows. I got to interview Aaron Menke from Lore, and then he had a Prime, Amazon Prime TV special, or TV series. I've been very fortunate to talk to folks very early on who have gone on to a lot of different stuff, and what you're kind of talking about with full schedules, just brought on a coordinator, these are like, I'm catching you early before the explosion happens.
Well, from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah, right.
I hope you're right. I really do.
We have been known to be the exception rather than the rule, though. So hold your breath.
I know.
No, we will.
I know, Amanda, you've got to leave us shortly, but I got to get in one more question because I'm not sure if it's you or Maria who can speak to this, but there's a couple of things I've heard on some Earios shows, and I did catch up on just a little bit of the big ones today, and I got to hear the story behind Pro Code.
Prode?
Oh, Prode.
Prode. What's the Prode story?
It's promotional code, and that's in all this ad copy. They always say, and we have a promo code for you.
Right.
So I'm just always looking. I'm a busy woman, I got a cat, I got a husband, I got a career. I'm always trying to save time. So if I can say Prode instead of promo code, you better bet your ass I do.
I always listen to the ads on an episode that I've never heard before. I heard Prode, and I heard putting deodorant on a cat.
That's the big ones.
I'm only saying this because, folks, if you start subscribing to Earios shows, and you should, don't skip the ads immediately because some of this stuff's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, we put it all on the line. We don't, just because we're selling something doesn't mean that we can't also be selling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So to get technical for a quick second, you guys have used Acast for all of the to sponsor with Earios type thing. Is it basically a concept of something that you wanted to have assistance with, or is it ever something you gave a thought to bring in-house, or what was that decision like?
Well, when we first started this idea, we were kind of looking for a partner that would help us with that aspect of it. And we didn't know exactly what that would look like, whether it was like, oh, we'll partner with someone and give equity away for an investment, or we'll just get an ad sales partner. We just knew that we needed some pre-existing infrastructure. So that's what it's been so amazing about Acast is we talked to a couple of different companies, but they were definitely the most in line with kind of our mission statement. So we just have a simple sort of ad sales partnership deal with them. We didn't have to give any equity away, which has been amazing. And they have been so helpful through this entire process. Like they're selling against our entire slate of shows, which has been awesome. And they've just like are there. It's mostly women over there that we deal with. And I mean, exclusively, actually. I think they do have men working there, but I've never seen one or
yeah, they do. They do. I brought this up to them, and they were like, "No, there's men there." And I said, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it."
I've never received an email from what I believe a man. I mean, unless the men have traditionally women's names, I don't know. But anyway, so they've been so helpful and like helping us with cross promo and so supportive, and they're very excited about all of our shows.
I'm just. Sorry, I'm taken aback. Right? There are men out there, right? Dan and I aren't the only two left. I hope. Do you guys have any like? What was the feedback? I guess right. You launched this, for by women for everyone network. What was the initial feedback like? And was it what you expected?
It wasn't what we expected at all, and it was like an outpouring of support. And it was, it was something where it seemed like, there's women's networks out there that are doing well, and so it's not like we're the first, to come about. But it just, I don't know what hit people with like this, but it just seemed with our Kickstarter that people were like, "Oh my God, yes!" Like it was just this outpouring of support that none of us expected. I don't think.
And overall, the press has been super positive. I really don't think we've had. Maybe there was like one person on Reddit who was kind of a hater saying, "Why does it have to be all women?" I think there was maybe one or two people who.
But that's a valid question, and I ask that every day. Like, why does it?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, but it is.
We made our bed. Now we're lying in it.
We're breaking down the whole motto of the network here.
Yeah, I don't know.
It doesn't have to be all women, but it just can't have any men.
That could be the new motto if you ever want to revise it.
We're not excluding men. It's just they're not allowed.
Exactly. And to be clear,
they can listen.
I have heard men on Earios shows, to be clear.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. We love men.
Men guests, men co-hosts, right? Well, I guess not regular.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is on The Alarmist, is that Rebecca? Is that her husband that's a regular appear? I don't know if that counts as a co-host per se. But
yeah. I mean, definitely. And also, we're having my series, The Complete Woman, is the whole back catalog actually is coming out tomorrow, and that will include Matt Gorley's spin-off, The Complete Man, and all of these seasons have formally been behind the Stitcher Premium paywall. So that will be, technically we will have one show hosted by a guy, but I'm executive producer.
Yeah, I wouldn't promote it. It's Matt. He's got enough out there.
Yeah, he's got
Doesn't need any
tons.
more promotion. So, Amanda, Maria has abandoned you,
yes,
and left you to the wolves. We do just have a few more questions for you. We'd like to hear a few more stories about Earios. And the next one I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about. We've touched on before in the sense of some of the things that folks will hear in the show. But this was mentioned in a interview that you guys had already done, I believe, with Vulture. But I wanted to flesh it out a bit and talk about this concept that I understand you guys started everything with and went in with the concept of effectively demanding listeners to go do reviews. Really straight up saying, go do it right now. And the mailbag episode that I listened to, the most recent at the time of this recording of the big ones, which, by the way, just as an aside, you see, I start out that conversation on there as, I don't know how good this is going to be. I loved it. I thought it was great. I really did love the mailbag episode, even though it was...
a true fan.
Yeah, I thought it was great. But... And you did it in that episode as well. I want to hear more about that because I'm sure there was conversation and this was a concerted decision. I just want to kind of hear more about how you guys decided to go about doing that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Maria and I, when we first started podcasting, would always do our asks at the very end of the episode, like a lot of people do. And we just it didn't even cross our minds that, oh, why would you wait till the end when it's so easy for them to just turn off? Why would you do that? And actually, one of our Kickstarter incentives for when we did our network Kickstarter was that we had 5-minute phone calls. If you gave, I think it was like, give $50 and we'll do a 5-minute phone call with you, and then put it on a podcast we were doing called Inner Earios about the creation of the network. And so we talked to, oh my God, that was actually so amazing. All of our listeners and supporters were so cool, and we loved getting to touch base with them. But one woman, I forget who it was, but she worked in some statistical side of podcasting or had some business knowledge about it. And she said that statistically, men are more likely to do their ask at the top of the episode and that they have better results, whereas women are more polite about it and they'll kind of, say like, well, if you have time or if you can, rate and review, like, they're embarrassed to ask, where men just typically are more forceful with it. So Maria and I kind of made a joke of it, and we started doing these very aggressive, demanding asks at the top of our episodes where we essentially yell at our listeners and tell them, this is premium content, and if you don't give us a review, then it's not going to exist anymore, and then that's on you. So, and it's kind of fun. Sometimes we'll have our guests join in, but it's honestly worked.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing that it's been that. Why? Why do you think it has?
Well, sometimes people just really need to be yelled at to do something. Like people
Like
take
my
podcasts. They do. I mean, people take podcasts for granted. It's really easy to listen to a podcast and never think twice about how much work goes into them. It's free content. You get spoiled. So you really need to hear it from the host. Like, hey, I'm putting out this podcast for you. You need to scratch my back. So I think almost all of our shows, we do the asks up top.
So you're still trying, you're still going out and pounding the pavement to write stuff and go to auditions and run this network. Do you still get a chance to like just sit down and relax and listen as a consumer of podcasts?
Yeah, what's funny is I definitely am saturated with podcasts between editing and recording, but I've actually been shocked by how much I still, when I get in the car or when I do dishes, I want to put on a podcast. So I definitely am still listening to the podcast that I've been a loyal listener of before we started the network. And if anything, I'm listening to them more because I'm in this conversation, in this community now. So yeah, it's so funny. I can't shake them.
What would you say the level of satisfaction or personal gratification, let's say, that you get from participating on the big ones or Earios as a whole versus your other work on screen or writing, like how, or the web series that you did before? How does this sort of fit in kind of the scale of all these personal experiences?
Well, I've always loved podcasting for the same reason, which is you can create something with low overhead, have full creative control, and then put it out and people can actually hear it, which is very unlike writing pilots for television or acting in shows that never air. It's really satisfying to be able to have that sort of creative control and to actually like engage with an audience and have people hear your work. So that is why I'm just like 100% so into podcasts, because you have all that control. And like I've done so many acted in pilots and written pilots and auditioned for so many jobs and worked so hard at the auditions just to not get the job. Like that's, 90% of that. But every time I record a podcast, I think maybe 3 or 4 times I've accidentally deleted them and they never see the light of day. But for the most part, they get to be, a part of the world. And so I think for me, that's why I believe so many creative people are into podcasts now.
There's obviously skills that cross over, but is there, I don't know, do you have a better sense of what you're looking for now when you go to either pitch an idea yourself or listen to an idea for a podcast?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, for us, the main thing we're interested in is someone who is authentically obsessed with this idea for a podcast, because a lot of people now are being told, by their agents or their managers or whoever that they should have a podcast, and you can sniff the people who are just doing it to do it out very quickly. And that's not going to be a lot of fun to work with people who don't really want to be doing it. So I think we're all about, working with people who just like, they're going to do the podcast with or without you, and wouldn't you just like to hop on board to their vision? So I think that for us is the biggest thing when we're kind of listening to people's shows or talking to people about new ideas.
Where do you see Earios, Amanda, in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now? Is there goals that the three of you sort of have in the back of your mind on where you'd like to see this go, or is it kind of along for the ride feeling at this point?
Yeah, that's a conversation we've been having recently. We've made it through almost 6 months of sort of, producing our 10 shows that are our babies and focusing on trying to build out their audiences. And yeah, that's a conversation we have a lunch on the books that we're going to sit down and talk about the future of Earios. And we have a couple of ideas of where we're going to head. And they're not decided on yet, so I can't quite say them. But we definitely want to, keep pushing and keep creating shows that we're super into. But I think the idea is like less but bigger and better, if that makes sense. So that's probably what we're going to be focusing on in 2020, and also continuing to do our own projects, because we've all been working on other people's projects so much that we're like, oh, wait a minute, we're all writers and creators. Like, we need to use some of these resources that we have to greenlight our own projects, and continue to do that.
Full-blown voice acted fiction podcast.
Yeah, we would like to.
I'm not throwing out suggestions or anything, just saying. Yeah.
That's kind of like, well, I've just been doing my the newest season of Complete Woman, and it's actually been interesting because I used to do it. It's a fiction series set in the 1960s. It's self-help for women, but it's all half written, half improvised. And I used to do it for Stitcher Premium, and that was really fun because they'd actually pay me, and I had resources, and it was great. And so this time, because I'm doing it for Earios, obviously, I didn't have quite the same resources. So
you need to talk to those Earios folks.
I know. And it's funny, I could have given myself more of a budget, but I was just like, it's the end of the 6 months. I don't want to, we're still being cautious with how we're spending, and I can do it for free. I do all the work myself. I'm just like making all my funny friends come over and improvise at my house, and they don't care. But anyway, yeah, so I want to do more. We all want to do more of our own stuff as well. So that'll be something we're putting energy into.
Mainly because of, and I guess this question comes to me because of the Kickstarter and the way you guys launched, but have you found that you've developed a community around the network as opposed to just, the ones that, naturally come up around shows?
Yeah, that's been interesting. So that's definitely something we want to foster more of. I know that there are a couple really big Earios supporters out there who are listening to multiple of our shows, but in general, I think it's kind of a challenge for smaller networks to really build that community. Like an example of this is there's no, I think we technically have an Earios Reddit board, but most of our shows still, if people are chatting about them online, they're under the Earwolf Reddit, if that makes sense. So it's I think one day as we build more shows and build our audiences, I'm hoping that we can really form an Earios community, because that's something we would love to do. And we definitely have the people out there who have been supportive of us, and they kind of consume whatever Maria and I put out there. So they're there and they're loving it, but I'd love to grow that.
I think we sort of talked about one of those ways that I hope there's more of crossovers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I did sort of overreact just a bit, but it did kind of excite me to hear those two.
It was great.
So it's just because those are the two I've been actively listening to, and a crossover sounds awesome. So more of that for sure.
Definitely.
I mentioned earlier I'm a big fan of tech podcasts, and Relay FM is one of my favorite tech podcasts. Kind of just keeps popping to my mind. It was two guys who started that, and it's all tech oriented and stuff. But the way they sort of had done something was they started appearing on other shows, and sort of like you were just talking about. So if I'm a huge fan of Amanda, and Amanda says, hey, we're starting a new show and I'm going to co-host it, and it's on Earios, if you love the big ones, come over here and check out my new one with blankety blank, then you could start to pull that over. And I think that crossover element, or following hosts in throughout the network, is definitely the complete woman. People may be starting to hop over to see that if they love the big ones.
Yeah, totally. So that's something we want to try and do more of it in the new year, because I think you're right. Like it's great to hear that you were excited about the crossover. Like that makes me go, oh, this is something we need to do more of. And we have the opportunity, and it's so easy to do. So definitely there'll be more of that coming.
One more question. I want to be, we both want to be respectful of your time, Amanda. But one more question for you on the network. For folks who are hearing about Earios the first time and are super interested in checking it out, I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite kid or anything of that nature. We already said that's the big ones. But generally speaking, how about this? If I'm a podcast aficionado and I'm into all kinds of different things, what are some of the things that, if you're into, you should check out the slate of Earios shows?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love all of our shows, but I will give you kind of the elevator pitch for a couple of them. And then the listeners, if something, is striking you, you can go check it out. So obviously, The Big Ones is the best podcast ever made.
So much for not picking a favorite.
The Big Ones is definitely the best. So that's the best podcast of all podcasts.
Yes.
We started this network in order to basically boost The Big Ones listeners. And, a lot of times we're working so hard on everyone else's shows that one kind of gets the short end of the stick, but it's really great. And then you've already done such a great job of plugging the Alarmist and web crawlers, so I don't feel like I need to touch on those. I will say that Filling the Void is a super fun show. I think it's really special, and that's Leslie Arfin. She's a writer, and she talks to celebrities and comedians about their hobbies.
And that's your newest edition, right? Is that correct?
That one's been out for a while. Actually, I think we might have launched with that. So there's almost 20 episodes for people to go listen to. And she was out of town for a while, so Carrie Kenny from Reno 911 in the state took over as a guest host, and her episodes are really fun. So I love that show. And Foxy Browns, that's a special one too. So Priyanka co-hosts that with Camilla Blackett, and it's a beauty podcast through the perspective of women of color, but they kind of get into like the broader discussion surrounding beauty and going through the world as women of color, and it's a really, really special one as well.
And folks who land on Earios' catalog immediately are going to probably, the thing that's going to jump out to them is Margaret Cho.
Oh, yes. Oh, God. She's amazing. And that's just that show's so special because Margaret has such a great energy, and she's so cool. And she could have done her podcast anywhere, but she was just like, yep, I'll do it with you girls. And we are so lucky to have her. And she's had some amazing guests on. We just had Quentin Tarantino on, which was mind blowing. I was sitting there recording Margaret Cho and Quentin Tarantino in her house. I was like, what is happening to my life?
I saw that. I was like, wow, I had not yet checked that one out, but I may have to. Yeah.
And that's a fun one because they're old friends. I guess they used to hang out all the time in the 90s.
Nice.
And so that was super fun. But obviously that show is that's amazing.
Yeah. And we've only just scratched the surface. I mean, that's 25-30% of the full catalog we just talked about there. There's so many more things.
There's so many more. And I'll just quickly plug The Complete Christmas, which is my fourth or fifth season of my Complete Woman series that's coming out to Earios on December 3rd. And it's super fun. I've got amazing improvisers in it. Of course, Matt Gorley, Paul F. Tompkins. I think Margaret Cho's going to be in it. Paul Rust, Angela Trimber, Stephanie Allen. So it's fun, and it's kind of a wild, absurdist 1960s version of the Christmas Carol.
That's so cool. That I'm going to have to look at. You know what else? Not that I hate to throw out a bunch of stuff that I've heard about, but I it's common for me to like share suggestions and ideas. So please feel free to throw out anything you want.
Please.
Earios Master Feed. That would be such a good idea.
Wait, explain what is that exactly?
All the shows go into it. Right. So every new show that gets released or specials, I was just thinking to myself, because when you were just describing that, the first question that came to my head, honestly, Amanda, was where's it going to be? Right. Which show feed is it going to be? And I wasn't sure. And so, but some networks have something called like a master feed where effectively all the shows go into it. So if you want to subscribe to everything the network does, you subscribe to this one thing and you get every episode of everything.
That's such a great idea. I gotta send some emails. That sounds super cool. I hope. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's where your true super fans will go, because obviously with 10 plus shows, 12 plus shows, you're going to really bombard folks. But it's certainly where folks can go to never miss a thing. You know what I mean?
Very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I just, when you were saying that, made me just think of that suggestion. So
yeah, no, that's great.
Jason, you got any more questions for Amanda about Earios?
I don't. I think I only checked out like a fraction of what you did, and I'm kind of like, I'm gonna have to probably weed out some more shows from my playlist.
Make some room, Jason.
It's time to weed them out again.
Give them a try. Yeah.
Yes.
Out with the old and with the new.
There's so much there. So web crawlers is, I'm sorry, going off. Web crawlers is almost like an education / entertainment show, in the sense that you can completely find out about something you may not be familiar with at all at the same time being entertained by it, which I think is like totally my ideal form of podcast entertainment. So it's one of my favorites for sure. But
that's so great.
Amanda Lund, co-founder of Earios, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. This was really a blast. You know, it's nice to kind of say out loud everything you've been up to, because I go, oh wow, no, we've done a lot.
Yeah,
and people are listening.
That's the best part, right? And that goes without saying that there's a lot there, a lot of shows, a lot of growth, and really a short amount of time. And I know I'm got some more to subscribe to now, and I'll be watching out for a lot of the things we've talked about. And folks listening, there's going to be all kinds of links in the show notes to Earios' website, a lot of the shows that we've been talking about, all in the show notes. But seriously, most podcatchers, you just search the word Earios, which is ear, iOS, and you will find all the shows, and take your pick, subscribe, bounce around, and check them out. So for this week on the Podcast Digest, for this episode, that's going to pretty much do it. Once again, thanks to both Amanda and Maria from Earios for joining us. And Jason, thank you as always for joining us as well.
It was great to be back with you, Dave.
It was good. Hopefully not as long to the next one. So that'll do it for episode 163 of the Podcast Digest, folks. Until next time, my name's Dan Lizette, and we'll talk to you soon.